So we're going to continue on here with this theme of conflict and misunderstanding. Now, our focus in these lectures is on Protestant Christianity, where we spend a lot of time on Catholics. But I do want to talk a little bit about Catholics here. And I think this is appropriate because I think it really illustrates this point about misunderstanding. But also I want to stress for the most Chinese, they don't really differentiate between Catholics, Protestants, and the Taiping. It's all kind of the same. They're the foreign. It's a foreign religion that follows this Jesus guy and that causes trouble. Right? That's for many Chinese. That's how they approach it, and that's something we need to kind of keep in mind. From the Protestants and the Catholics, they see these differences. Many Chinese people don't. So just to review, Catholic theology holds that baptism and other sacraments are very important, and that baptism you can perform on babies, right? Just the way Catholic theology works. I won't go into it here because we talked about that really early in this class. But what happened was in China in the 19th century, there was a problem with overpopulation. Basically, a lot of people were having lots and lots of kids, but they didn't have the resources to support them. This led to the abandonment of children. So you could be walking down the road and there would be an abandoned child. And the hope, of course, of the parents was, I want to stress, many these people were extraordinarily poor, and they had other kids they had to take care of, and they abandoned the child in hopes that the child would be found. Right? That was their hope. The problem is who would find the child. You were hoping that a person would find the child and take care of the child, but as this image depicts here, sometimes pigs or dogs would find the child and eat the child. There's no nice way to put it, but that's what would happen. So if you're what can I say? If you have, anyone who has a sense of humanity doesn't want to see babies get eaten by pigs and dogs or just eaten in general. And what happened was for Catholics, there was this especially important goal of not only trying to rescue these children physically, but what happened is they would take in the kids and they would baptize them. And you can see this is a French image here, and this was an advertisement in France asking French children to donate money to support children in China, to give priests and missionaries and Chinese Catholics money so that they could pick up and take care of these children and baptize them. And there was also, this was part of a missionary strategy because, these kids then are raised as Catholics, and now, boom, you got some Chinese Catholics, right? So win-win, right? You get to say, from the Catholic perspective, you save the kids from dying, and you give them an opportunity from your theological perspective, a better chance of having a good afterlife, and you start building, or you help build up the Catholic community. There's some problems here. One thing was that a lot of the kids that were abandoned died. That's not surprising, right? You leave a kid outside for a couple days, there's a good chance, and they maybe didn't have a good malnutrition. They were maybe born weak. I'm sorry, good nutrition, not good malnutrition. They maybe weren't fed very well when they were with their parents. They were maybe born weak because their parents are impoverished and they themselves are malnourished. These kids had a very high death rate, not the fault of the Catholics who were taking care of them. But if you're Chinese, you're like, why are these Westerners so interested in getting these kids? What are they going to do with them? And why do these kids keep dying under the Western care, right? So there's a misunderstanding here. But in a sense, in understanding human behavior, this misunderstanding is going to have an impact. And so they developed Chinese books like this that said, you know what? You know why Westerners want babies? And here they're opening up a woman to extract her baby. They want babies to make medicine. That's why Western medicine is so powerful, is because it's got baby parts in it. And how Westerners, they have cameras that can take a picture. They make that from people's eyeballs. That's where it comes from, you see. Now, some of these rumors are frankly malicious. They're spread by people who just want to hurt Christians. But the fact is that people believe them because we've seen some Christians behaving in problematic ways, right? The Taiping Rebellion kills a lot of people. Westerners, Christian missionaries, how do they get more power in China? It's through Western imperialism. So we can understand when that kind of thing is going on, how someone might believe these rumors. And of course, this leads to attack on Christians. In 1870, there's this thing called the Tianjin Massacre. It's a large city called Tianjin where there was a lot of Christian activity, in which riots killed 19 Westerners, including 10 Catholic nuns. And that's interesting because it shows that there was a strong connection from a Chinese perspective between being Western and being Christian. And then that's connected with imperialism. Now, why did this happen? There's multiple causes. There's rumors, like what I just talked about. One of the things that made many Chinese people concerned was, and one reason they targeted the nuns, was the nuns are running an orphanage, and there were a lot of kids who died. And they're like, well, why are all these kids dying? Now, of course, this was not because the nuns were abandoning them or treating them badly. It's because they often were in poor health when they even got to there. And this was a time period when a lot of people died from disease and things like that. But when you mistrust the community, you interpret that as the community's up to no good. In addition, there was lots of poor Western behavior. The Western people often did behave badly and arrogantly towards Chinese people. And you can kind of think about that. We don't want to be insulted, but there's something about humanity if we're insulted by someone outside our group that makes us even angrier, right? It's like, who are these Westerners to come into China and treat Chinese people badly, right? So this is the thing. Some Chinese people converted to Christianity, and it is important there are Chinese people converting to Christianity. Some of them do so because they believe in the religion, others to obtain power. And some of these people are called rice Christians. They convert just to get some kind of material benefit. Now, one thing I want to point out, remember, China during this time period is very poor. There's lots of economic problems. There's lots of social disorder. So I don't want to be too hard on people who are doing this, right? Who convert to a religion because they're suffering and that religion promises them some material benefit, right? And you can do both. You can say, hey, this Christianity, I like the teaching of the afterlife, and they'll give me some rice, they'll give me a job, I'll convert. You also had that kind of thing. But the key thing is, though, there were also some Chinese who converted to Christianity to obtain power and then lorded it over other Chinese. They didn't try and get some power to make their lives a little bit better, to get some food to eat, to defend themselves from bandits. Some people were actually like bullies who wanted to get power and connect themselves to powerful Western missionaries. And then they could act like jerks and no one could do anything about it because they were connected to a mission. And sometimes the missionaries couldn't tell who were the good Christians and who were the bad ones. This is a problem. And Christianity is challenging gentry power because in the past, people looked to local elites in China for power. You're a local Confucian scholar, those people are going to look to you for power. But now they're looking to missionaries. And so you've got this serious conflict, and the government cannot please both the Chinese and the Westerners, right? From the Chinese perspective, for many Chinese people, this massacre was well-deserved. The missionaries were up to no good. Who are they to come in and do what they want, right? From the Western perspective, you killed a bunch of nuns who were here to take care of orphans. What the heck, right? You can see how there's some conflict here. And because Westerners are more powerful, the Qing government is going to punish the Chinese while protecting the Westerners. Neither side is really happy with this, as going to seek to develop their own power, right? From the Chinese perspective, they're angry at their government because their government is putting foreigners first, it seems to them. And the Westerners are like, the government failed to stop this from happening. So what happens is there's going to be continued expansion of Western power into China. Again, don't want to go too much into this, but basically Western powers will use their military and political power to get more privileges in China and to actually take over small pieces of China. Now, China is never completely colonized, but increasingly the Chinese government is losing power while Western power is expanding. And this is kind of a stereotypical image from the time period where you can see Westerners have come together to cut up China. And one area that we're going to talk about very briefly is this area called, in Shandong province, this area here. And I'll talk more about why it's important later, but this is an example of how this is going to lead to more conflict. And this was an area that was under German influence. This was an area where the German imperialism was expanding. And that was often connected to missionary work because missionaries aren't just Christians, they're also members of a particular country. So if you're in an area where German influence is expanding, probably there's German missionaries there. And in 1897, 2 German missionaries were murdered by the Big Sword Society. Basically, it was Chinese vigilantes. They did not like the expansion of Christianity. There were, again, some Christians behaving badly. And they said, well, the source of this is these imperialist Christians. Let's just go kill a couple of them. And that's what they did. And then the German government said, oh, the Chinese government can't protect our people. We need to seize control over the area in order to protect our missionaries who have a treaty right to be there. Oh, and also, by the way, this area has a lot of mines and railways, so we need to control those, and we need soldiers here to make sure that all this stays secure, right? So this is a constant problem. So that even if missionaries don't want to be connected to imperialism, they usually end up somehow, at least in the minds of Chinese, and I think realistically so, connected to imperialism. And this is kind of one of the fundamental problems that Christians, missionaries struggle with, is what allows them to kind of operate in China is Western imperialism, but that also makes them unpopular. So it's a difficult thing. And here you can see that when they do have a legitimate gripe here, because like 2 of their missionaries just got murdered, but then the German government uses this as a excuse to expand. And what adds insult to injury to many Chinese people is that this is where Confucius was from, right? He's considered kind of the center of Chinese civilization. And you've got these Germans expanding their power there. You've got missionaries there who are telling people don't be in ancestor rights and things like that. From the Chinese perspective, this is really bad. So many Chinese people resist, and the Germans respond by using those soldiers to kill them. So it's a huge problem. Notice this is like in 1897. In 1898, there was a huge problem with rain. Right? I'm going to read to you a description of what this was like. This is written by a Chinese person at the time. During the 4th month, there was still no rain. Officials from the governor general down to the county magistrates repeatedly offered up prayers, but the severe drought persisted and was even made worse by fierce winds. The Boxer bandits everywhere started to set up altars. They lorded it over everyone in the streets, making the population nervous. Yet all looked up to them as gods, and even the authorities dared not mess with them. During the first 10 days of the 5th month, the severe drought continued. The railway between Beijing and Tianjin, remember that was that place where there was the massacre, were destroyed. The Boxer bandits in Tianjin now became still more violent and unreasonable. So what happens is there's a drought and it's not raining. And if you're a farmer, it's hard to work when there's no rain. And droughts are really stress-inducing because you're constantly just looking for rain to happen and you don't have anything to do. So what happened was a lot of these farmers, these peasants, got together and were like, hey, it's not raining. Want to do something? We can't do work. Yeah, let's go practice martial arts. And they start practicing martial arts. And what ends up happening is they start talking, why is it's not raining? What's going on? And they come from a religious worldview of Chinese folk religion. They say, well, the gods must be mad at us. We must have done something that made the gods angry. What did we do that made the gods angry? And here is a poster that explained why the gods were angry. I'm none other than the great UD come down in person. Disturbances are to be dreaded from the foreign devils, i.e. Christians, Westerners. Everywhere they are starting missions, erecting telegraphs and building railways. They do not believe in the sacred doctrine, and they speak evil of the gods. Their sins are numberless as the hairs of the head. For this reason, I have given forth my decree that I shall descend to earth at the head of all the saints and spirits, and that wherever the Boxers are gathered together, there shall the gods be in the midst of them. The will of heaven is that the telegraph wires be first cut, then the railways torn up, then shall the foreign devils be decapitated. Right? So basically what this poster is saying is, we have sinned by allowing these Westerners to come in and teach their Christian doctrine, which is wrong. It conflicts with our values, right? They don't believe in Confucianism. They say the gods are bad. They are terrible. And so we need to deal with them. And what's fascinating about this idea of how they deal with them, there's this belief that the gods are coming down and they will possess you. And then if you're possessed, you can't be shot successfully. Like if someone shoots you, it's not going to hurt you. So there's this idea of spirit possession here. And it's very, in a sense, kind of magical thinking. There's also this, I want to stress these Boxers, right? These are these martial artists who are trained. They're called Boxers by the Westerners. But it's also, on one side, what's magical in the sense of, the gods have descended, they're mad, but they can possess us, and that will make us more powerful. There's also, it's very logical, because, it says, destroy the telegraph wires, then destroy the railways, then attack the foreign devils. Well, you destroy the telegraph wires first, because then they can't call for help. You destroy the railways next, because then they can't call for help, say, hey, someone's destroying the railways, because you cut the telegraph wires. That prevents troops from coming in. and it prevents them from escaping, then you can kill them. If you just try and kill them right off, they're gonna call for help. So it's interesting because it's strategic, but also have some magical thinking. And this next slide I'm going to read is really disgusting. But again, this shows us this kind of animosity that had developed against Christians, even, and how it could also be exaggerated and not have anything to do with what Christians were actually doing. So this is a song. I'm not going to sing it, but I'm going to read it. And this is a song, an anti-Christian song from the Boxers. They proselytize their sect and believe in only one God. The spirits in their own ancestors are not even given a nod. Their men are all immoral, their women truly vile. For the devils, it's mother-son sex that serves as the breeding style. No rains come from heaven, the earth is parched and dry, and all because the churches have bottled up the sky. The gods are very angry, the spirits seek revenge. En masse they come from heaven to teach the way to men. So, highly problematic stuff. This is not what Christians are doing or teaching, but the idea here is we've got this problem because the Christians are here. And what happened is sometimes they would go kill Christians, and they killed not just missionaries, they also killed Chinese Christians, and they didn't care whether you were Protestant or Catholic, they would kill you. Sometimes they would do this, and then it would start raining. They would say, see, told you so. Right? We killed the Christians, started raining. Let's go kill more Christians because clearly we're on the right path. And again, I want to show you this is an image from this rebellion and you can kind of see how they saw it. Right? There's the Western troops who are getting beaten. There's the Chinese troops who are attacking them. There's a church that the Westerners are trying to defend. And one thing I think is interesting here, I don't have a whole lot of time to talk about them, but these were the Red Lanterns, and they were girls, basically prepubescent girls who were believed to have magical powers. And they're basically, they're in the middle there, casting spells to help the Chinese in their battle. Now, the Boxer Rebellion is put down. There's this Western technological advantage, and it kills a lot of people, right? It kills a large number of people. A large number of Christians will die, Chinese missionaries, but especially Chinese Christians, especially Catholics. Catholics are out in the countryside. They're not in the city, so it's harder for them to defend themselves. But both Catholics and Protestants will die in large numbers. These are Catholic, an image remembering some Catholic martyrs. But a lot of these people die. And this is celebrated by Christians saying, look, see, we have true Christians in China. They were willing to die for their faith. Don't say they're all just rice Christians, because here these Christians died rather than give up their faith. And this is something, of course, if you come from a Christian perspective, this is something to respect and to celebrate these people's lives. But there's this problem, though. That's not the ultimate goal of Christianity is not just to get killed. It's to spread Christianity, right? And this isn't working, right? We just, we're having this huge kind of struggle against Christianity, right? This huge struggle against Christianity. How do we, as Christians, and I'm not saying like as Christians here, I'm talking about like the missionaries at the time and Chinese Christians. How do we, as Chinese Christians and Christian missionaries living in this context, how do we try and make Christianity Chinese? How do we make it so it's not seen as foreign? Especially, how do we do this when we've got this we've got this power issue here, and when we're so connected to imperialism? How do we fix that problem? And it's a serious problem. Now, I do want to note, just if you're interested, there's a wonderful book called Boxers and Saints. Actually, 2 books. It's a graphic novel, and it's written by a Chinese American Catholic trying to make sense of what it means to be Chinese and Christian. And it's a really interesting book. A lot of times I think Christian literature suffers in the fact that sometimes it's just not very good. It's just made to like try and convert the audience, and it just is kind of dull and it just hits you over the head. This is not like that. This is really, really well done. And it's called Boxers and Saints because the first book is from the perspective of one of the boxers who's against Christianity. And the second is by a young lady who converts to Christianity. And it's interesting because they're both guided by a particular historical figure, here by the first emperor Qin Shi Huang and by Joan of Arc. So highly recommend. And it goes to that question, though, how do we make Christianity Chinese? How do we do this?